Right, so we are on page 60 of our journal. I still have some of you who have not turned in the homework or vocab from this week. Please get that in as soon as possible. Each day I don't get it, it's counted as 10 points late, so please take care of that. All right, so today we're doing simple interest. This is a review from 7th grade, actually. All right, so simple interest. The formula for simple interest is I equals PRT. And the I and the P are capitalized. That's important. All right, so we're going to talk about each of these letters. The first one is the I. It stands for, sorry, I got to look at my notes, so I can make sure y'all's matches everyone else's. It stands for interest. And it must be in money form. Must be in money form. And this is the extra money. The extra money that is either earned or owed. And we'll talk about this once we've looked at all the letters. All right. Then we have P, which stands for principal, which also must be in money form. And this is the amount we start with. The amount we start with. This is going to be the money either borrowed or money invested. So while you copy that down, let me explain this. So there's two main scenarios here. The first one is when you borrow money. So this money could be to go to college. This money could be to buy a car. It could be to buy a house. It could be to buy furniture. It could be a credit card. This is anytime we borrow money. We borrow a chunk of money, but the bank or whoever we got the money from says, okay, so you borrow this much money, but we're going to charge you a little bit extra. So you may borrow $100, and they say, you know what, we're going to charge you $5 extra for borrowing that money. It makes sense. This is how their business runs. It runs on loaning people money and them having to pay a little bit extra to do that. The other scenario is putting money in a bank into like a savings account, a savings bond, a retirement, any kind of savings situation. And there's quite a few of them out there. But when I save money and I leave that money there for an amount of time, it's going to earn money while it sits in the bank, okay? Now, we're not going to go into depth on how it earns money, but it earns money while it sits there. It's going to grow. In all reality, an interest rate on a savings account is very small. You're going to earn very little money sometimes on a savings account. Versus interest rates, borrowing money, is going to have a lot more. They're going to charge you a lot more to borrow money. And we talked a little bit in class today about how they determine what your rate's going to be on how much you're going to have to pay back. So if you're really good with your money, there's something called a credit score. Every single person above 18 is given a credit score. And the better you do with your money, so pay bills on time, you manage your debt, you take care of things, you have savings, all that kind of stuff, helps you get a really good credit score. And it can go up to 800. But if you're bad, like you pay your bills late, or you are really bad with your money, or you owe a bunch of people money, different things like that, your credit score could be low. And the lower your credit score, the more money they're going to charge you to borrow. Because you haven't proven that you're good with money, and you haven't proven that you're going to pay back all this money. Versus someone who's been doing really well, they're going to say, you know what, you've been doing really well paying your bills, you've got a good credit score, we're not going to charge you as much money to borrow. Now, this amount of money is determined by the R in this equation, which is the rate. And this must be in decimal form. So it's given to us as a percent. Actually, erase that because I wanted to match the in-class notes. I'm sorry. Normally I make y'all's video and then use y'all's notes to do the in-class, but I'm having to do it in reverse. Since we had technological issues yesterday. Okay, so rate is the percent we change to a decimal. And to change it to a decimal, we're going to move the decimal 2 spots to the left. And this is going to be the percent charged. So, an example. If I borrow $1,000 and you borrow $100 and they say, you know what, we're going to charge you 10% interest rates. It doesn't make sense that I borrowed $1,000, you borrowed $10, that we pay the same amount. If they say, you with $1,000, you're going to have to pay $5 extra in interest. Okay. It doesn't make sense that you borrowed $10, you're going to pay $5 in interest. That's a lot on just a small amount. So we use a percentage for it. So for instance, 10% of $1,000 is $100. They say, you borrowed $1,000, you're going to have to pay back that $1,000 plus an extra $100. And 10% on $10 is only $1. So we loaned you $10, you're going to have to pay us just $1 extra to borrow that money. So it's done based on a percentage. That percentage is determined a lot of times when you're borrowing money. It's determined on that credit score we just talked about. So for instance, if you're really good with your money, you have a good credit score, when I go and buy a car, my interest rate might only be 5 or 6%. Versus if you have really bad credit score, your interest rate might be 8, 9, 10%. I really don't know how high that goes. I do pretty well with mine, probably because I'm a math person. So I do well, so I don't really know what a bad credit score will do for your percentage, but it's definitely going to make a difference in how much I pay back. And then our T in this equation is time. And it must be in years. Every now and then they'll give it to us in like 6 months and we're going to have to change it to half. But this is how long the money will sit in savings. The money will sit in savings. Or how long it takes to pay back. How long it takes to pay back. So for instance, when you borrow money, they're going to say, okay, well, how long is it going to take you to pay back? The longer it takes you to pay back, the more you're going to have to pay. Okay? So I used this example in class today. My last car that I had gotten it, I said I was going to take 5 years to pay it back, which is about average. A lot of people pick somewhere in that range. 5 years to pay it back. But I decided that every time I got extra money, when my taxes came back or anything like that, I would put at least part of that money to paying off that car. And because I did, I ended up paying it off in less than 4 years. And I ended up saving, I don't remember how much money it was, but it was hundreds, maybe even close to $1,000 just by paying it off so much earlier. Because the longer you borrow that money, the more they're going to charge you. And I want you to think about this from your personal experience. If you borrow $1,000, if you loan somebody $1,000, you're going to want that paid off pretty quickly. The longer they take to pay it off, You may not charge them more money for that, but definitely the more irritated you're going to get that you haven't gotten your money back. It's the same thing. They're not getting irritated. They're just going to charge you more money. They say, you know what, we're loaning this to you for a long time. We're going to charge you more. So the more you borrow and the longer you let it sit there, or and the higher the rate, the more you're going to have to pay back. The reverse of that is the more I put in a savings account and the longer I let it sit there, the more it's going to earn back. Okay? So we're going to look at a couple example problems. Now, this is really hard because y'all can't really write the examples out. I'm not going to make y'all write out the examples. So I'm going to read it to you, and then we're going to just take some notes on it. So example 1. To buy a car, Sam borrowed $12,000. So we're going to put borrowed $12,000. We're just taking notes on the situation. For 5 years. For 5 years. At an interest rate of 6%. How much interest? So we're going to have 2 questions here we're going to look at. How many? Sorry. Oh, it's a Friday. How much interest? And the total he will pay back. Alright, so first, of course, if I'm going too fast, you can pause it. We'll slide this up. So let's look. We have I equals PRT, so I'm going to be looking for what is my I equal, what is my P equal, what is my R equal, and what is my T equal. So borrowed $12,000. If we look back at the top, borrowed is mentioned in principal because that is my starting amount. That's what I'm going to start off with. So that's going to be my principal. It's what I'm starting off with. For 5 years, that time's usually pretty easy for people to see. At an interest rate of 6%, so when I see that percent sign, it goes to my rate, and I don't know my I. Go ahead and change my 6% to a decimal. So if I equals PRT, I don't know. P is 12,000. R is 0.06. T is 5 years. So when I plug that into a calculator, I get an interest of $3,600. So let's talk about what that means. That means that he borrowed $12,000, but they're going to charge him $3,600. So my total he pays back is going to be, he still has to pay that $12,000 plus the extra that he's being charged. So the total is going to be $15,600. Why is this important? Because even though that car, remember this was a car situation, was only $12,000, at the end of the day, at the end of this 5 years, he's going to be ended up spending almost $16,000 on a car. So that's important to know when you get to the point of buying a car. Just because it says $12,000 on that sticker, that's not going to how much you're going to end up paying. Okay? All right, let's look at example 2. We have 4 examples, so we're going to do on the right side, and we'll do the other 2 on the left side. So let's look at example 2. Simple interest is $3,500. Rate is 3.5%. Time is 4 years. And it's asking us, what is the principal? Okay? So my formula is I equals PRT. So what is my I? That's simple interest. Remember, it's money, so it's $3,500. My I equals P. I don't know my P. My R is 3.5%. I'll leave some room there because remember I got to change it. It's 4 years. So this confused my in-class students today. 3.5%. It's got a decimal already, so they were like, man, I'm done. It's already got a decimal. But it's got a decimal, but it's not in decimal form. It's actually in percent form. It just has a decimal there. I know that sounds kind of confusing, but if it has a percent sign, it's in percent form. So I need to change that. It's going to be 0.035. So I equals PRT. I know my I. I don't know my P. My R is 0.035. And my time is 4. So I'm going to work what I can. So I'm going to multiply these two together. And I get 0.14. To get that P all by itself, I need to divide both sides by 0.14. Now we know the principal is going to have to be pretty big because the interest was big. And so when we do this, we get $25,000. So whatever the situation, it didn't really have the story for us. Whatever, let's, you know what, just for fun, let's say that someone put $25,000 into a savings account. At the end of 4 years, with 3.5% interest rate, we're going to earn $3,500 on it. Okay? So I'm going to slide to the left of my journal to do example 3. Example 3 is marked borrowed. So we're going to put borrowed $5,000 for 2 years to remodel his bathroom. If he repaid, so he repaid a total of $6,500. It's asking us, what is the rate? Sorry, I know that's kind of hard to see through. I guess I can try it in pen. Let's try it in pen since you can see the through. Alright, so my formula is I. So I want to know what my I is, what my P is, what my R is, and what my T is. Borrowed, that's my P. 2 years. That's good. We paid a total of $6,500, and I don't know my rate. But does that mean my interest was $6,500? So I want you to think about this. He borrowed $5,000. At the end of 2 years, he paid $6,500. Does that mean that was all interest? No, the interest can be found by he paid a total of $6,500, but $5,000 of that was because he borrowed $5,000. The remaining part, that $1,500, is my interest. So I'm going to do I equals PRT. I is $1,500. P is $5,000. R I don't know. And T is 2. Do what I can. 5,000 times 2 is 10,000. Divide both sides by 10,000. I get R equals 0.15. Now let's go back and read our rates. Rate is a percent. We change to decimal. So right now it's a decimal. So the rate needs to be changed back to a percent. It was a 15% interest rate. All right, let's look at example 4. Hopefully this bright orange is easier to see than that pencil was. Lily invested $3,000. Invested $3,000 in a bond at a yearly rate of 5%. She earned $450 in interest. how long was it invested? So in this situation, Emily invested. That means she put $3,000 into something. Into a savings, into a bond, into a retirement, into something. And the interest rate was 5%. She earned $450. That's great, but we want to know, well, how long did it sit there for then? So I have I, P, R, and T. Invested, that's what we started off with. 5%, which I need to change to a decimal. 0.05, didn't leave myself much room there. Interest was $450. So time we don't know. So I equals PRT. So 450 is my I, 3,000 is my P, my rate's 0.05, and my T I don't know. Solve what I can. I told you at the beginning of the year that solving for variables you were going to need all year long. I hope you're realizing now, oh, she wasn't joking. And guess what? You're going to need it all next year too. Divide both sides by 150, and I get that it's out there for 3 years. All right. We're going to continue looking at interest next week. You'll have homework over it next week. But if you have any questions, as always, send them my way, and you'll have a good weekend.